Just when we thought 3i Atlas was starting to become a little bit more conventional, a little bit more comet-like, it throws us a crazy curve. Now, to be clear, 3i Atlas is finally starting to develop a stubby tail, which is not atypical for a comet at the distance from the sun that 3i Atlas currently is, about 2.5 times the Earth-Sun separation, or 374 million kilometers. The observed tail is approximately 30 arcseconds across the sky, or about 56,400 kilometers long, pointing towards the southeast. It's about 10 arcseconds, or 18,800 kilometers wide, which is significantly more extended than its compact appearance in images of 3i Atlas from early July 2025, or even images taken of 3i Atlas by the James Webb Space Telescope. But to be clear, just because a stubby tail is starting to form, that does not mean that 3i Atlas is a conventional comet. Indeed, we've made discoveries recently that indicate that this object was emitting some sort of material from its surface as early May of this year, according to the Transiting Exoplanet Survey satellite images that appear to indicate a 3i Atlas that is starting to outgas or produce some sort of material at an enormous distance from the sun, 6 times the Earth-Sun separation, when it shouldn't have been outgassing anything at all. So whatever this haze is, dust or perhaps some other material that has surrounded this object since it started to make its way into the solar system, it's been there for a very long time, and it might not have even been there as a result of the sun's heat warming it. Might have been produced as a result of some other kind of activity. But what is far more significant than the tail, the dust, or behavior of this cloud around 3i Atlas is its composition. James Webb already told us some strange things about it. The fact that it's producing an enormous amount of carbon dioxide and very, very little water and carbon monoxide, something that no other comet in history has ever done. But now, for the first time, we have evidence of metal on this object, or specifically, one type of metal that shouldn't be there by itself if 3i Atlas is a natural object, but definitely could be there if it's artificial. No clickbait here, guys, so stay tuned for a very special episode of The Angry Astronaut coming at you right now. Good afternoon, alien enthusiasts, and welcome to another Angry Alien Bulletin. Unsurprisingly, 3i Atlas is returning to the discussion, and really, there's no way to not do this, at least not in my opinion, because once again, as I continue to emphasize, this is a unique event in the history of astronomy. Never has anything like this passed through our solar system and observed by our civilization. Surely things like this must have passed through our solar system at some point in its history, but interestingly enough, this is definitely the first time we've had anything like this under observation making its way through the solar system. And so therefore, it deserves nonstop coverage, in my opinion, every time we learn something new and interesting. And wow, things have taken another interesting turn as we learn more and more about the composition of this mysterious object. Once again, to emphasize, as I said at the beginning of this video, this is not clickbait. This is not me inventing some kind of weird scenario to where there might be an interpretation to where this evidence looks like artificiality or anything like that. It is an obvious conclusion that can be drawn from the data. Is it the only conclusion? Might there be a natural reason that all of this is happening? Yes. But once again, the natural reasons, the natural explanation for 3I Atlas and its odd composition and behavior is every bit as unlikely as the artificial one, perhaps even more so. It requires an extreme interpretation of the data as some sort of bizarre natural occurrence that not only have we never seen it before, the fact that it's happening at all is staggeringly unlikely in our universe. Unlikely for all of this to have happened purely by chance. But again, to emphasize, yes, there definitely could be a natural explanation. Also, it definitely bears talking about the tail of 3I Atlas. As I mentioned also at the beginning of the video, it's beginning to form a tail. A very stubby tail, especially if we consider the distance involved, but a tail nonetheless. But even that doesn't mean that what we're watching is a comet here or a conventional comet. As a matter of fact, we know for certain that this isn't a conventional comet at this point. Any object surrounded by a haze of tiny objects, dust or something else, eventually as it gets closer and closer to the sun, there's no way for the solar wind to not have some impact on that. Gradually, bit by bit, the debris, the dust, whatever you want to call it, whatever it might be, is going to start trailing behind the object. So yeah, I mean, I would be very, very shocked if this thing didn't start to form a tail at some point. But once again, it's a very, very stubby tail, and it doesn't begin to explain the coma of dust or whatever that was leading the object, that was defying the solar winds and advancing ahead of this extremely fast object somehow. All of these things were mysteries to begin with, but now we have strange composition as well. Composition that suggests artificial metal being present, perhaps an artificial process of the production of advanced metals, and that is something that nobody expected. By the way, guys, stay tuned to the end of the video where I'm going to give you my artificial interpretation of what this new data might suggest. So once again, I have little choice but to quote from Avi Loeb on this topic because nobody else is going to talk about the possible artificiality of this, but let's go ahead and begin. Quote, "A new paper on spectroscopic data from the Very Large Telescope, or VLT, reported the surprising detection of nickel without iron in the plume of gas around 3I Atlas. Nickel without iron is a signature of industrial production of nickel alloys. This data constitutes a new anomaly of 3I Atlas. Natural comets generally show iron and nickel simultaneously. We've all heard of nickel-iron asteroids, but never has a natural object been found in the solar system that only has nickel with no other elements being present, at least as far as metals are concerned. Natural comets show iron and nickel simultaneously because they are produced together in the ejecta of supernova explosions. Is this anomaly another clue for a possible technological origin of 3I Atlas? The paper written on this topic suggests chemical formation through the nickel carbonyl channel, which is an extremely rare and exotic possibility in comets, whereas it is a standard technology for industrial nickel refining. The inferred mass loss rate of nickel for 3I Atlas is about 5 grams per second at a heliocentric distance of 2.8 times the Earth-Sun separation. So this observation was taken when 3I Atlas was a little further away from the sun. And by the way, the presence of this nickel is increasing dramatically with decreasing distance from the sun. Now, the spectroscopic data on the plume surrounding 3I Atlas also reveals cyanide with a mass loss rate of about 20 grams per second, again at a distance of 2.85 astronomical units, and an even steeper dependence on heliocentric distance. So the closer it gets to the sun, the more this stuff seems to show up. These results add to the chemical anomaly anomalies implied by the Sphere X Space Observatory and the Webb Space Telescope that revealed that there's a gas plume around 3I Atlas dominated by 95% of carbon dioxide with only 5% H2O, which is very, very different from the typical water-rich comet. As a matter of fact, we've never seen this ratio of carbon dioxide to water ever before with any comet, especially with a lack of carbon monoxide as well. Now, the idea that the nucleus is much smaller than the 46-kilometer diameter inferred from the 1-micron data collected by the Sphere X telescope requires that there's a dense coma of dust that reflects nearly all the sunlight from 3I Atlas. But in that case, that much dust would have been pushed by solar radiation pressure to trail the nucleus, constituting a prominent cometary tail, not the little stubby thing that's showing up now that it's getting a lot closer to the sun. No cometary tail was observed around 3I Atlas until very recently. The only thing we've seen is a plume of gas and dust extending towards the sun, defying the solar wind. Now, what kind of industrial process would involve nickel waste with nothing else, no iron and no other metals being present? Well, one possibility that I researched is an advanced alloy called nickel titanium. It's actually a smart alloy that retains its shape upon heating after being deformed at a lower temperature. At certain temperatures, it can undergo significant deformation and recover its shape without permanent damage, making it highly elastic. And once again, nickel waste is produced with no other metal byproducts in the construction of this material, and it's utilized in a variety of different applications, such as medical stents, guide wires, orthodontic wires, where its flexibility and shape memory are critical, also actuators in aerospace and components that exploit its shape-changing properties, and then things like eyeglass frames and temperature-sensitive actuators. And why is there no iron? Well, because it would interfere with the precise phase transformation required for its shape memory and super elastic properties. Nickel and titanium specific atomic interactions drive these behaviors, and iron's presence could disrupt the lattice structure. And only nickel waste is produced in the manufacture of this particular smart metal at a rate of about 11 kilograms for every kilogram of waste that is produced. Now, I crunched some numbers and determined that based on the amount of material that we are seeing right now, about half a metric ton of nickel is being produced by 3I Atlas, and at a ratio of roughly 10:1 waste to finished product with nickel titanium, about 50 kilograms or so worth of nickel titanium could be produced on 3I Atlas with this much nickel resulting from the production. That's just one example of industrial processes that could create this much nickel with no other metals being present. And what about the cyanide? Well, interestingly enough, that chemical is also used in the production of a variety of different types of metals. Although cyanide is mainly used for gold and silver extraction, it can also be used in electroplating baths to form stable metal cyanide complexes, which are essential for depositing metal coatings onto other materials, a technique relevant to many advanced applications. It's also utilized in steel manufacturing and in metal polishing processes. And assuming the 3I Atlas is an alien asteroid ship of some kind, then what might they be using all this metal for? Why might they need it? Well, we'll get to that in just a little bit. Let's go ahead and finish up the article. On October 3rd, 2025, 3I Atlas will pass within 29 million kilometers from the high-rise camera on board the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, which will be able to image it with a 30 kilometer per pixel resolution. By the way, this is very very close to Mars, and 3I Atlas is passing quite close to Jupiter as well. Much, much less than 1 astronomical unit. Again, very strange that this is happening all by chance. But in any event, this camera might be able to image 3I Atlas with a 30 kilometer per pixel resolution. Such an image could separate the contributions of the nucleus and coma to the reflected sunlight and constrain with greater confidence the size of the nucleus. So all NASA has to do is turn the damn camera around on October 3rd, 2025, and we might be able to dismiss the debate as to just how big the nucleus of this strange object is. Now, astronomer David Gross still suggested that we should observe 3I Atlas with radio telescopes for any technological radio transmission coming from it. It's just a general policy of doing this with any interstellar object. Avi obviously agrees with this. This encounter is a blind date of interstellar proportions, and on any blind date, my best advice is observe the other side. We had already revealed our existence by broadcasting radio signals for over a century. This act might have triggered the visit. If 3I Atlas had originated from the inner edge of the Oort cloud at about 1,000 times the Earth-Sun separation, it could have started its journey 80 years ago when radio transmissions became routine on Earth. The first nuclear explosion took place on July 16, 1945, exactly 80 years ago from the date of this article. On the one hand, I would be pleased if 3I Atlas turned out to be a CO2-rich comet, implying that humanity is not at risk from alien technology. But on the other hand, humanity desperately needs a wake-up call to avoid self-destruction. So what is a possible artificial interpretation for what we're seeing with 3I Atlas right now? Well, as I mentioned in previous episodes, there is a deep astronomical mystery that to this day has not been solved regarding vanishing dust in a solar system that appeared to be evolving like so many other solar systems do, and then all of a sudden the entire protoplanetary disk around the star vanished completely in the space of just a few years. The system was called TYC 8241-2652-1. In 1983, it appeared to be a naturally evolving solar system, but by 2008, there was a noticeable change in the amount of dust in the protoplanetary disk, a lot less than there was in 1983. And then 2 years later, even that dust completely vanished. We're talking about 10 to the 22nd power kilograms of material suddenly vanishing in the space of just a few years. The leading natural hypotheses like runaway accretion, radiation blowout, or grain growth completely fails to explain the rapid final drop, especially in material from 2008 to 2010. A black hole is a very unlikely scenario due to the absence of observable consequences like X-ray emissions, gravitational lensing, or dynamical disruptions, which would have been detected. So what could have possibly caused all of this material to vanish? Well, what if we're talking about a machine civilization with self-replicating nanomachines harvesting all of this material? And by the way, we're talking enormous amounts of valuable material, including carbon and especially metals being used to perhaps self-replicate, like the so-called Van Neumann probe or the monolith from 2001: A Space Odyssey that creates duplicates of itself so it's able to spread throughout the galaxy, eventually seeding duplicates of itself in every solar system throughout the entire cosmos. If this is the case, then might this also be the case with 3I Atlas? Might we be observing a halo of nanomachines which are drawing in usable material? And by the way, if we're talking about a 300,000 kilometer radius sphere of influence, zones, which this haze appears to be, it appears to be that large, there is a substantial amount of material, both in terms of dust and small asteroids in a region this large, especially in interplanetary space, and the amount of that material increases as you get closer to the sun. That would explain why we see this radical increase in nickel production and also cyanide production as the object moves closer and closer to the sun. In addition to that, there's a lot of carbon dioxide coming from 3I Atlas. What if there are living organisms, or if 3I Atlas is a living organism itself, consuming the carbon in space dust and other materials being gathered by these nanomachines? A living organism consuming all of this carbon might produce a CO2 byproduct, very much like the label release experiment that was sent to Mars. Nutrients being introduced into the Martian regolith produced CO2 byproducts, which were detected by the label release experiment. Living organisms can produce CO2 once they've consumed nutrients. The nutrients in interplanetary space being the carbon present in space dust and asteroids. What if that is what we're actually observing? Sure, a wild theory, but in my opinion, no more wild than all of the improbable natural explanations that we've seen thus far that explain nickel without iron, CO2 without water, and especially without carbon monoxide. This requires an exotic comet of titanic proportions, unlike anything we have ever seen before. And while I acknowledge that this sort of thing might exist in interstellar space, because we've seen precious few interstellar objects in the time that we've been looking for them, in my opinion, the artificial biological alternative is just as likely or just as worthy of close inspection. What do you think? Well, feel free to leave a comment while you're hitting that subscribe button and also that like and notification bell. So once again, I will continue to say until we have very, very convincing evidence otherwise that everything we've seen thus far does not conclusively prove artificiality. There certainly is a natural scenario where all of these things could be happening by chance and naturally. However, it's getting stranger and stranger the more we learn about 3I Atlas. As I mentioned in the video, all of the strange things that have happened so far, the trajectory that is so close to the plane of the ecliptic, the fact that it's passing so close to not one, not two, but 3 planets, all of those things made this object unbelievably odd and also very, very unlikely. Tens of thousands to 1 at the very least that any of this could have happened by chance. And now that we're combining all of these strange characteristics with this odd composition, I think it's very irresponsible to not at least explore the possibility of artificiality. Once again, the detractors like to say that, yeah, there's no way this could be an alien ship. Avi Loeb's crazy talking about an alien ship. Well, no, it's not an alien ship as we would understand a spaceship. Obviously not. There's so many things about this object that unless the aliens are doing a hell of a job of trying to mimic cometary behavior or something, which I suppose might be possible, and understandable behavior if they're trying to pass through the solar system unnoticed. But again, an interstellar spaceship doesn't have to be a spaceship like the USS Enterprise or a Star Destroyer. It can be an asteroid with modifications, with machinery and habitable space, that sort of thing. Or perhaps an asteroid that's partially alive. A giant living organism partially made up of rock and partially made up of something else. All of these possibilities need to at least be entertained. It is so irresponsible and narrow-minded to not do it. Now, is it also irresponsible to say the 3I Atlas is definitely something artificial, definitely an alien artifact? At this point, yes. I don't think we have enough data at all to conclusively prove this object is one thing or another. A lot more needs to be learned. And until we learn a lot more, it is both rude and inefficient to condemn the conclusions of others just because you happen to not like them. Thank you very much for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. I'm heading to Australia in 12 days. I'm getting very excited about this. I'm going to be attending the IAC conference, the biggest aerospace conference in the world in Sydney. But in addition to that, I'm going to be visiting a number of UFO hotspots. This is definitely going to be a mixture of spaceflight and alien UFO type of content. I can't wait to bring all of this to you. If you'd like to support what I do, all the details are in the description. Patreon is the best way. Still trying to get 0.5% of my subscribers to become Patreon supporters at least the $3 level. If I am able to hit that milestone, I will do two things. One, do a UFO broadcast from a UFO hotspot for 24 hours, and I'll travel to that location without doing any fundraising and also cover a Starship launch without any fundraising. That is the kind of freedom that getting to that milestone on Patreon can bring this channel. So if you're interested, once again, all the details in the description. Thanks again for watching. Until next time, stay angry about space.